guys, it's Steffi from the Novelty Corner. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here for my weekly wrap up for the week of August the 13th to the 19th. This week I was participating in the 7in7 reading challenge, and I also wrapped up my Tome Topple reading challenge as well. So at the very end I'll give you the stats for those reading challenges. I read a total of 8 books this week. One of them was a graphic novel. 5 of them were middle grade, 1 was the last tome from my Tome Topple Readathon, and 1 was a new release young adult book. I read a total of 1,761 pages, and my yearly reading total is up to 178 books. Or stories. I think last week I said I was going to go with stories. So 178 stories. I am feeling much better from last week. However, if my voice still sounds rubbish, I do apologise. It goes in and out. But we'll just keep going the way that we're going. The first book that I read this week was Username Evie by Jo Sugg, which is a graphic novel, and I think it's a young adult graphic novel. It's about a girl whose father has recently died, but before he died he created a computer program designed to help her feel confident in her world. It's designed to be tempered by her good influence. She's generally a good person. However, a corrupting influence infiltrates the game and thus turns it into like a zombie horror thing. It was okay. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Glad I read it. I don't think I'm going to continue with the series. The second book I read this week was All the Colours of Paradise by Glenda Miller. This is the 4th book in the Kingdom of Silk series. It was published in 2009 and it continues the story of Perry Angel from the last book in this series. And in this book we discover that Perry suffers from some sort of learning disability. It's not stated what it is in there. I can probably make a few guesses based on experience in teaching kids like Perry, but I'm actually really pleased that it doesn't actually give him a label. It just goes in to say what he can and what he can't do and how the people in the community support him. As always, beautiful book, 5 out of 5 stars. I'm pretty sure the entire series is 5 out of 5 stars. Then I finished Lost Stars by Claudia Gray. This was the last book in my Tome Topple challenge. It was 551 pages and it was published in 2015. This is the story of Thane and Sienna, 2 children living on the planet of Jellican, who are accepted into the Imperial Academy and go through officer training through this program. They come from very different parts of their world. So Thane comes from the aristocratic side, Sienna is a rural villager, and they've bonded over their love of flying, and they support each other as they try and achieve entry into the academy. Once they're there, however, their friendship is tested by the expectations of the Imperial leadership, and eventually they find themselves on opposing sides. I wouldn't say that the writing style is especially sophisticated, but it's very easy to read, and you really feel for these 2 characters because you've seen their friendship grow, and then all of a sudden they have to face things that they never thought they would have to, like being apart, or the possibility that they're actually rivals, or that maybe they're even enemies. And that was a really fascinating concept. What I didn't realize about this book was that this actually spans all 3 of the original Star Wars trilogy films. I actually thought it took place before one of them, but it spans the entire series, and you just get glimpses, like the events, the Battle of the First Death Star. It's just a moment. The events on Hoth is just a moment in the story, and then it continues on with what would have been going on behind the scenes with the various factions in that particular war. The most fascinating thing I think was reading Sienna's story, because I loved Thane. He was genuinely a good guy and he wanted to do right by everyone, but sometimes he didn't always know the right way of doing that. Sienna, on the other hand, has grown up with the knowledge that loyalty to something that you have dedicated yourself to is more important than anything else. And she's dedicated herself to the Empire, and all of a sudden she finds herself wondering whether they're doing the right thing, but does it impinge on her honor if she turns away from it? And so her story was really, really fascinating and really complicated, and you wanted to shake her at times because you can say, look at everything that's going on around you, but you could also see where she was coming from. Obviously this book was very heavily skewed on the side of the rebels, but it was still fascinating to see both sides, especially when you have characters on both sides who are inherently good characters. 4.5 out of 5 stars. I highly enjoyed this. Then I read Plum Puddings and Paper Moons by Glenda Miller, and this was published in 2010, I believe, and it is the 5th book in the Kingdom of Silk series. This follows Griffin's sister Scarlet as she befriends a young boy called Anik, who works at the Colour Patch Cafe with her. Anik and his family have come from a place far away where there is war, obviously, dealing here with refugees, and again, it's not specific about the details, which I like because all of these stories are told from the perspective of kids. So kids don't see things the way that adults do. So they don't want facts and dates about the places. That's almost irrelevant. They just want to know how they can help. And Scarlett becomes determined to make a difference, and she decides to declare peace on Cameron's Creek where she lives. And it is just really sweet because kids really do want to make a difference if you give them the opportunity to do it. It was just beautiful. 5 out of 5 stars. Then I read book 6 in the Kingdom of Silk series, and it is The Tender Moments of Saffron Silk, again one of Griffin's sisters. Saffron is a young girl who loves to become other people. She has this real fascination with history and she likes to become these characters from history. But what her family don't know is that Saffron is suffering from some unknown illness. She sees firebirds in her head and she finds it really difficult to cope sometimes and finds herself in bed most of the day. And she's sort of scared to talk about it with anyone because obviously in the first book we discovered that the Silk's youngest sibling, Tishkin, had passed away. So there's this fear in the family that if you're sick, something bad's going to happen or you're going to go away. And this is really the story of how Saffron and her family deal with her being unwell and how they go about getting her help. Very, very poignant. This one was published in 2012 and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. And I finished off the Kingdom of Silk series by reading Nell's Festival of Crisp Winter Glories, and this one was published in 2013 and it deals with aging. The Silk family has a very wonderful grandmother in the form of Nell, and she loves to spend time with the children. She loves to cook for them and to dress up and to have a great time. You know, Nell's getting older and unfortunately she can't do all the things that she used to do, and Perry decides that he wants to organise a dance in Nell's honour because she used to love going to big dances with her own sisters. However, Nell has an accident and it's how the Silk family and especially the children, how they deal with her recovery. Like I've said before, all of these books are happy, sad books. They just tug at your heartstrings, and perhaps that they're not really written for younger kids. I think they're written for older readers because all of them do have this underlying message of how to be kind and how to be accepting of everyone, no matter who they are or where they are in their life. And it was just beautiful. So I highly recommend this series. They're super quick to read. They take like less than an hour to read because they're only about 120 pages each. Highly, highly recommend them. Then I read Dragon Dawn by Carol Wilkinson, which was published in 2008 and has been sitting on my TBR shelf for years and years because I think I picked it up when I still worked at Borders, and I think I picked it up because it was a signed copy. And it is a middle grade book, I think, or verging on young adult. And I believe it is sort of the prequel to her Dragon Keeper series. But this is the story of a dragon named Danzy who is not yet 1,000 years old, and while all the other dragons are hibernating through winter, he himself is actually not able to hibernate, and so he finds himself wandering the earth trying to track down the descendants of his last dragon keeper to return his belongings to them. But along the way he comes across a young trickster who he initially disagrees with because he is conning people out of their money, but as they continue on they begin to discover that they're more similar than they would have thought. I gave this 3.5 out of 5 stars. It was a really fun read. And for this last book, I'm going to spend a bit of time gushing because I read No Limits by Ellie Marney, and I picked this up at the book launch on Friday night. Ellie Marney very kindly signed it for me, and then I picked it up and I couldn't stop reading it because it is amazing. So this is the spin-off book to the Every series, so Every Breath, Every Word, Every Move, and this follows Harris Derwent from Every Move, and it picks up right where that book left off. Harris has been shot in the leg and he is in hospital, and there he meets Amy and she's working at the hospital. She doesn't initially intend to get involved in Harris's life, however she discovers that he is going home to a very abusive relationship with his father, and that he's also not able to properly care for his injury, and so she works really hard to try and get him to a safe place and proper care and for his leg so he can recover. Harris in the meantime is trying to work out what to do with his life now. He is broke. His father has massive debts that he now has to try and pay off because he feels this sense of obligation and he needs to get the man off his back. In order to pay off those debts, he is recruited as a runner for a drug cartel running out of Mildura into the the country towns in rural Victoria. Harris decides to become a police informant for Amy's father, who is the police sergeant of their town, and try and uncover a lot of information about this particular drug cartel. Harris is, well, one, he's hot. Yay, look at the cover model. But he's a good guy, and he's really stuck between a rock and a hard place in this book, and he's trying to work his way out of it. And Amy is absolutely wonderful. She is so tough and so brave and so strong, and she sees the good in Harris even when he can't see it in himself, and that's what prompts her to try and help him. And she gets involved in something that she would never have normally have gotten herself involved in. There is so much character development in this book series. The romance is spoon-worthy, and I was on edge the entire time that I was reading this. I couldn't put it down, and I had to find out what was going to happen next. So 5 out of 5 stars. This was published just last week. It is a self-published book. I will leave a link to where you can find it on Amazon if you would like to pick it up, but I highly recommend it. You don't have to have read the Every series to be able to read this. It does stand on its own, and there's a little bit of background to it to catch people up. I think this might actually be my favorite book from that world. So love, love, love. So that's all the books that I read this week. And now to do a really quick readathon wrap-up thing on the readathons that I've been doing. So in Tome Topple, I read Wonderstruck, I read Lost Stars, and I read The 12. So that was 3 tomes, which is pretty damn good. And altogether it was a total of 1,931 pages. For the 7in7 readathon, I read 7 books. And they were No Limits, Lost Stars, Dragon Dawn, and the last 4 books in the Kingdom of Silk series, and that was a total of 1,579 pages. I don't think I have any readathons coming up for a while, so, well, there's 24-hour TBR knockdown readathon that is happening on the 16th and 17th of September, but I will talk about that later. So for now, I am readathon free and I have books to read. I've got quite a few things to read for review, so I've got to get on those this week. Let me know in the comments what you have been reading. Have you read any of the books that I've read? Please talk to me down below about them. Please, 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 because I love those books, especially if you've read No Limits. I hope that wherever you are in the world, you are having a wonderful day, and I will catch you guys in my next video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye guys.